Globally, over 50,000 animals are reported stolen or deliberately harmed by their owners each year. A staggering statistic that rips through the idyllic facade of companionship, revealing a dark undercurrent of human depravity where the very creatures we vow to protect become victims of our most heinous acts. This unsettling truth forms the very bedrock of the narrative we are about to unravel, a story not merely of theft or neglect, but of a calculated, cold-blooded betrayal that challenges our understanding of the human-animal bond, pushing the boundaries of what we deem possible within the sanctuary of a shared home. Today, we delve into a case that shook a quiet suburban community to its core, leaving an indelible stain on the hearts of animal lovers and law enforcement alike. A chilling saga that unfolded in the seemingly tranquil town of Oakhaven, where the picturesque landscapes belied a darkness simmering beneath the surface. Our story begins with the disappearance of Barnaby, a magnificent Irish wolfhound, whose absence from the Oakhaven Canine Sanctuary was initially dismissed as a simple, albeit distressing, oversight. Barnaby, a creature of immense loyalty and gentle spirit, had been a fixture at the sanctuary for nearly 3 years, a beloved resident awaiting a forever home, his towering presence and soulful eyes captivating all who met him. His routine was as predictable as the rising sun. A morning romp in the sprawling exercise yards, followed by a hearty breakfast, and then a quiet vigil by the main gate, a silent sentinel hoping for the arrival of his fated family. When Barnaby failed to appear for his morning meal on that fateful Tuesday in late October, a subtle ripple of unease spread through the sanctuary staff, a premonition of something deeply amiss. Sarah Jenkins, the sanctuary's steadfast manager, initially attributed his absence to an adventurous foray into a forgotten corner of the property, a harmless exploration that would soon see him trotting back with a sheepish grin. However, as the hours stretched into an agonizing afternoon, and Barnaby remained elusive, a frantic search commenced, escalating from a casual stroll to a systematic sweep of the entire 20-acre facility. Every kennel, every bush, every hidden nook meticulously scrutinized. The air grew thick with a palpable tension, each unanswered call of his name amplifying the gnawing fear that something far more sinister than a simple escape had transpired. The sanctuary, a haven designed for safety and second chances, now felt permeated by an insidious dread. The initial police report was filed under missing animal, a category often relegated to the mundane. Yet the palpable distress of Sarah and her dedicated team lent it an unusual gravity. Officer David Miller, a seasoned veteran of the Oakhaven Police Department, arrived on the scene, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the escalating panic. He listened patiently as Sarah recounted Barnaby's amiable nature, his robust health, and the impregnable security measures of the sanctuary, which included high fences, locked gates, and a comprehensive CCTV system. It was this latter detail that immediately piqued Officer Miller's interest. A facility of this caliber, designed to prevent exactly this kind of disappearance, hinted at a more deliberate act. The initial review of the CCTV footage, however, yielded no immediate answers, only further deepened the mystery. The perimeter was undisturbed, the gates remained locked, and no unauthorized vehicles were seen entering or exiting the premises. It was as if Barnaby, a creature weighing over 150 pounds, had simply vanished into thin air, a ghost in the machine of the sanctuary's otherwise meticulous operations. The anomaly of the situation struck Officer Miller with particular force. In his years of service, he had encountered countless lost pets, but none that simply evaporated from a secure environment without a trace, leaving no footprints, no broken locks, no disturbed earth. This was not a simple case of a wandering canine. The ensuing days were a blur of escalating urgency. Local newspapers carried Barnaby's photograph, his noble face gazing out from the pages, a silent plea for his return. Social media campaigns exploded, igniting a compassionate firestorm across the internet, thousands sharing his image, offering prayers and theories. Rewards were posted, tips poured in, each one meticulously investigated by Officer Miller and his small but dedicated team, only to lead to frustrating dead ends. The Oakhaven community, usually defined by its quiet routines, found itself gripped by a collective anxiety, a shared sense of loss for an animal many had never even met. yet whose disappearance symbolized a breach in their collective sense of security and innocence. Amidst the growing despair, a crucial detail emerged from the depths of the sanctuary's meticulous records. Barnaby, despite his residence at the facility, had a prior owner, a man named Arthur Pendleton, who had surrendered him nearly 3 years prior due to what he cited as unforeseen financial circumstances, and a sudden move to an apartment with a strict no-pets policy. This information, initially filed away as standard procedure, now seemed to shimmer with a new, unsettling relevance. Arthur, a man described by the sanctuary staff as reserved and somewhat aloof, had periodically visited Barnaby, always maintaining a polite distance, never quite engaging with the other volunteers or staff, a ghost in the periphery of Barnaby's new life. Officer Miller decided to pay Arthur Pendleton a visit, a routine inquiry, yet one tinged with a nascent suspicion. Pendleton lived in a modest home on the outskirts of Oakhaven, far from the bustling downtown, a secluded residence surrounded by dense woods, an area where prying eyes were scarce. When Officer Miller arrived, he found Pendleton in his garage, meticulously polishing an old, classic car, a man seemingly absorbed in the quiet mechanics of his hobby, undisturbed by the world outside. His initial reaction to the news of Barnaby's disappearance was one of carefully controlled surprise, a slight widening of the eyes, a brief pause in his polishing rhythm, but no overt display of shock or distress. This subdued response, rather than reassuring the officer, subtly deepened his unease. Pendleton, a man of precise, measured words, calmly explained that he had severed all ties with Barnaby upon surrendering him, reiterating his financial woes and housing constraints. He offered condolences and expressed a vague hope for Barnaby's safe return, but his voice lacked the genuine warmth and sorrow that Officer Miller had come to expect from individuals discussing a beloved pet. There was a detachment and almost clinical objectivity that felt out of place. He presented a perfectly reasonable alibi for the time of Barnaby's disappearance, supported by a receipt from a local hardware store and a gas station transaction, dates and times precisely accounted for. Yet, something about the encounter lingered, an unshakable sense that the pieces did not quite fit, a faint dissonance in an otherwise harmonious account. Back at the station, Officer Miller's gut instinct, a finely honed tool developed over decades of police work, nudged him to dig deeper into Arthur Pendleton's past. A comprehensive background check, initially yielding nothing overtly suspicious, began to reveal subtle discrepancies, minor inconsistencies that, when viewed in isolation, appeared insignificant, but together began to paint a picture of a man shrouded in calculated ambiguity. Pendleton's financial history, specifically, showed a sudden and substantial improvement shortly after Barnaby's surrender, contradicting his stated reasons for giving up his pet. His sudden move, initially cited as a small apartment, actually involved the purchase of his current secluded home, a property far more substantial and certainly animal-friendly. The narrative of unavoidable sacrifice began to unravel, exposing a more intricate, perhaps duplicitous, reality. Meanwhile, at the Oakhaven Canine Sanctuary, Sarah Jenkins was consumed by her own quiet despair. Barnaby had been more than just a resident. He was a symbol of hope, a gentle giant whose presence brought comfort to the other animals and joy to the staff. His kennel, once a place of warmth and anticipation, now stood empty, a stark reminder of his absence. Sarah, refusing to abandon hope, launched an even wider search, distributing flyers in neighboring towns, contacting veterinarians, and even reaching out to distant rescue organizations, casting a wide net in the desperate hope of catching a glimpse of her beloved wolfhound. She even walked the perimeter of the sanctuary countless times, searching for an overlooked clue, a patch of disturbed earth, a broken branch, anything that might explain the inexplicable. A breakthrough, however, did not come from official channels or widespread public appeals, but from an unexpected source, a series of subtle anomalies within the sanctuary's own digital ecosystem. The sanctuary's advanced security system, while seemingly flawless, had a complex network of internal logs, recording every access, every sensor trigger, every data point, a digital chronicle of daily operations. A young, tech-savvy volunteer named Maya, driven by a relentless determination to find Barnaby, began to pore over these logs, not just the perimeter feeds, but the deeper, more granular data, searching for an anomaly, a glitch, a single misplaced digital breadcrumb. She discovered a pattern that, at first glance, seemed innocuous. Several weeks before Barnaby's disappearance, there had been a series of brief, almost imperceptible, outages in the internal camera feed from Barnaby's specific kennel. These were mere flickers, lasting only seconds, easily dismissed as minor technical glitches in a system with thousands of data points. However, Maya noticed that these flickers always occurred late at night, in the deepest hours of the morning, and always coincided with a unique IP address accessing the sanctuary's internal network, an address that did not belong to any authorized staff or volunteer. It was a phantom visitor, a digital ghost in the machine, quietly probing the system, testing its vulnerabilities. This was not a random act of hacking. It was a targeted reconnaissance. Armed with Maya's discovery, Officer Miller dispatched his cyber forensics unit to delve deeper into the mysterious IP address. Their findings were immediate and alarming. The IP address traced back to a series of sophisticated proxy servers, carefully designed to obscure the user's true location, a digital labyrinth built to prevent identification. However, the unit, with painstaking effort, managed to peel back these digital layers, revealing a shocking truth. The final, originating IP address, though routed through multiple servers, belonged to none other than Arthur Pendleton's home internet connection. The man who had feigned indifference, the man with the seemingly airtight alibi, was the phantom visitor, meticulously planning his insidious act. The revelation sent a jolt through the investigation. Pendleton's polite veneer had shattered, exposing a calculating mind beneath. Officer Miller now viewed every past interaction, every measured word, through a new, chilling lens. The unforeseen financial circumstances and no-pets policy were clearly elaborate fabrications, a smokescreen to obscure his true intentions. But why? Why would a man go to such elaborate lengths to steal back an animal he had willingly surrendered? The motive remained elusive, yet the evidence of premeditation was now undeniable, shifting the entire case from a mere missing animal report to a complex criminal investigation. With the digital evidence secured, Officer Miller sought a warrant for Arthur Pendleton's residence. The legal process, typically meticulous and slow, was expedited given the gravity of the implied deception and the potential for animal cruelty. As the warrant was being processed, a surveillance team was discreetly deployed around Pendleton's secluded home, a silent vigil maintained throughout the night, ensuring no further evidence could be tampered with or removed. The tension was palpable. The quiet suburban night was suddenly charged with the weight of impending confrontation, the culmination of weeks of painstaking investigation. The raid on Arthur Pendleton's home was conducted at dawn, a swift and decisive operation. The air was crisp, the morning light still hesitant, as officers converged on the unassuming house. Pendleton, roused from sleep, displayed a fleeting moment of genuine shock, his carefully constructed composure momentarily faltering as he faced the reality of his unraveling deception. He offered no resistance, his silence a heavy admission of guilt, his earlier facade completely stripped away by the harsh glare of reality. The immediate search of the premises, however, yielded no signs of Barnaby, no barking, no familiar scent, no visible evidence of a large Irish wolfhound inhabiting the secluded property. The house itself was meticulously clean, almost sterile, a reflection of Pendleton's precise nature. Every surface was spotless, every item in its place, a domestic tableau of ordered normalcy. This lack of immediate evidence of Barnaby's presence was both frustrating and perplexing, yet Officer Miller refused to be deterred. He knew Pendleton was a man of cunning, capable of elaborate concealment. The search expanded, extending to the sprawling woods surrounding the property, an area Pendleton often traversed, offering numerous potential hiding spots. Forensic teams were brought in, meticulously sifting through every inch of the property, searching for even the most minute trace evidence. It was during the forensic sweep of Pendleton's garage that a critical, almost hidden detail emerged. Tucked away in a dimly lit corner, beneath a tarp-covered boat, was a small, well-maintained dog carrier, disproportionately small for an Irish wolfhound, yet bearing faint traces of animal hair and a distinct musky scent. More importantly, a subtle, almost imperceptible scuff mark on the concrete floor, leading towards a workbench, drew the attention of a sharp-eyed technician. This led them to a set of heavy-duty tools, including a large, industrial-grade metal grinder, its surface gleaming suspiciously clean. The absence of rust, despite its age, hinted at recent use. The forensic analysis of the dog carrier and the grinder revealed startling, horrifying information. The hair samples from the carrier, though sparse, were definitively identified as Irish wolfhound, specifically matching Barnaby's DNA profile, which had been on file from his sanctuary intake. The grinder, when swabbed and analyzed at a microscopic level, contained minute traces of metal particles and biological residue, consistent with bone and animal tissue. The picture that began to form in the minds of the investigators was one of unspeakable cruelty and a grotesque act of dismemberment. The initial hope of finding Barnaby alive began to curdle into a chilling dread. Confronted with this damning evidence, Arthur Pendleton's composure finally shattered. The polite, detached man transformed into a trembling, sobbing figure, the weight of his monstrous secret finally crushing his carefully constructed facade. He confessed, a torrent of confessions spilling from him, revealing a motive so twisted, so rooted in an insidious form of self-interest, that it shocked even the most hardened officers. Barnaby, he revealed, was not stolen out of a renewed desire for companionship or regret for surrendering him. Barnaby was stolen for his semen. The revelation was met with a stunned silence, then a collective gasp of disbelief. Pendleton explained his insidious scheme. Barnaby, as a purebred Irish wolfhound with a documented lineage of champions, possessed highly valuable genetic material. Pendleton, burdened by debt from his failed investments, had discovered an underground market for high-quality animal semen, particularly from rare or prize-winning breeds. He had initially surrendered Barnaby because he couldn't afford the exorbitant costs of proper breeding and artificial insemination, but the allure of quick wealth had proven too strong to resist. He planned to become a ghost breeder, selling Barnaby's valuable genetic material to buyers who preferred anonymity, a lucrative venture that would alleviate his financial woes, all while keeping Barnaby hidden from prying eyes. His plan, however, had gone tragically awry. After covertly retrieving Barnaby from the sanctuary, a feat he accomplished by exploiting the very digital vulnerabilities he had meticulously discovered, he had transported the magnificent animal back to his secluded home. The process of semen extraction, however, was complex and required specialized equipment and expertise that Pendleton lacked. In his clumsy attempts, driven by desperation and a chilling disregard for the animal's welfare, he had severely injured Barnaby. The wolfhound, already stressed and disoriented, reacted with fear and pain. Pendleton, rather than seeking veterinary help or returning Barnaby to the sanctuary, panicked. The thought of being discovered, of his illicit scheme being exposed, outweighed any moral obligation or empathy. His confession continued, painting a picture of escalating horror. To silence Barnaby's pained cries, and to eliminate the incriminating evidence, Pendleton had made an unspeakable choice. He had ended Barnaby's life, not swiftly or mercifully, but with a brutal, chilling expediency. Then, in a final act of desecration, he had dismembered Barnaby's body, using the industrial grinder found in his garage, scattering the remains in the vast, dense woods surrounding his property, hoping the wild animals would complete the ghastly cleanup, leaving no trace. He had planned for Barnaby to simply vanish, a ghost of a pet, while he profited from the animal's genetic legacy. The details of Pendleton's confession sent shockwaves through the Oakhaven community and beyond. The image of the gentle giant, Barnaby, meeting such a horrific end at the hands of the man who once called him his own, twisted the public's perception of companionship into a grotesque parody. Sarah Jenkins and the entire staff of the Oakhaven Canine Sanctuary were utterly devastated, their grief compounded by the horrifying details of Barnaby's suffering. The betrayal was not merely financial. It was a profound violation of trust, an assault on the very essence of the human-animal bond. The legal proceedings that followed were swift and decisive, fueled by public outrage and the irrefutable forensic evidence, coupled with Pendleton's detailed confession. The charges were severe: animal cruelty resulting in death, theft, and obstruction of justice. The prosecution meticulously laid out Pendleton's calculated deception, his chilling premeditation, and the barbaric manner in which he had disposed of Barnaby's remains. The defense, overwhelmed by the mountain of evidence, offered little in the way of mitigation, reduced to pleading for mercy for a man who had shown none. During the trial, the court heard powerful victim impact statements from Sarah Jenkins and other sanctuary volunteers. Their voices choked with emotion as they spoke of Barnaby's gentle spirit, his unconditional love, and the gaping void his absence had left. They articulated not just the loss of an animal, but the shattering of an ideal, the violation of a sacred trust between species. The prosecutor painted Pendleton as a man consumed by avarice, who saw a living, breathing creature not as a companion, but as a commodity, a means to an end, a source of quick, illicit profit, discarding its life when it became an inconvenience. The verdict was an unequivocal guilty on all counts. Arthur Pendleton was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, a sentence lauded by animal rights activists and the general public as a just retribution for his monstrous actions. The case became a landmark, setting a precedent for the severity of animal cruelty laws and highlighting the often overlooked darker side of the exotic animal trade and the illicit market for genetic material. It served as a grim reminder that not all betrayals are committed by strangers. Sometimes, the most profound acts of treachery originate from within the very circle of trust, from those we once believed to be guardians. In the aftermath of the trial, the Oak Haven Canine Sanctuary became a focal point for mourning and reflection. A memorial was erected in Barnaby's honor, a sturdy stone bench beneath an ancient oak tree, inscribed with his name and a simple phrase, "Never forgotten, always loved." Visitors often left flowers, small toys, and heartfelt notes, creating a poignant shrine to the gentle giant whose life was so cruelly cut short. The community, though scarred by the incident, rallied together, reinforcing their commitment to animal welfare, strengthening local ordinances, and establishing educational programs to prevent similar tragedies. The case of Barnaby and Arthur Pendleton became a stark cautionary tale, reverberating far beyond the quiet streets of Oak Haven. It underscored the critical importance of vigilance, not just against obvious threats, but against the insidious potential for betrayal from unexpected quarters. It brought into sharp focus the complex legal and ethical dimensions of animal ownership, genetics, and the burgeoning, often unregulated, markets for animal commodities. The story forced a global conversation about the inherent value of an animal's life, challenging the notion that pets are mere property, underscoring their sentience and their capacity for love and suffering. For Sarah Jenkins and the sanctuary staff, the healing process was long and arduous. Every new adoption, every wagging tail, every hopeful glance from a rescued animal was tinged with the memory of Barnaby. His story became a silent vow, a commitmento renewed dedication, an unwavering promise to protect and advocate for every creature that passed through their gates, ensuring that no animal would ever again suffer Barnaby's fate. The sanctuary itself underwent a profound transformation in the wake of the tragedy. Security protocols were meticulously reviewed and upgraded, not just for physical perimeters, but for digital vulnerabilities, with new, cutting-edge systems implemented to thwart even the most sophisticated attempts at intrusion. Volunteer screening processes became more rigorous, extending beyond basic background checks to include psychological evaluations, an acknowledgement that the most dangerous threats could sometimes wear a mask of normalcy. The Oak Haven Canine Sanctuary, once a symbol of gentle rehabilitation, evolved into a fortress of compassion, its walls fortified by the painful lessons learned from Barnaby's brutal end. Sarah Jenkins, initially haunted by feelings of guilt and inadequacy, found solace in action. She became an outspoken advocate for stricter animal protection laws, traveling to legislative hearings, sharing Barnaby's story with impassioned eloquence. Her voice, once quiet and reserved, now carried the weight of experience and a fierce determination. She lobbied for increased penalties for animal cruelty, arguing that crimes against sentient beings deserved to be treated with the same gravity as crimes against humans. For the suffering inflicted was no less real, the betrayal no less profound. She emphasized the critical need for comprehensive DNA databases for purebred animals, a measure that would not only aid in recovery but also deter illicit breeding practices by making the origin and ownership of genetic material traceable. Her efforts, along with the national attention the Barnaby case garnered, sparked a significant shift in legislative discourse. Politicians, once hesitant to prioritize animal welfare over other pressing issues, now found themselves confronted by a wave of public sentiment demanding change. The Barnaby's Law initiative began to gain traction, proposing mandatory minimum sentences for severe animal abuse, coupled with stricter regulations on the sale and trade of animal genetic material. It aimed to close loopholes that allowed for the exploitation of animals for profit, much like Pendleton had attempted, and to ensure that such heinous acts would no longer be dismissed as mere property disputes. The ripple effect of the Oakhaven case extended beyond legislative chambers. Veterinary schools and animal forensics programs began incorporating the Pendleton Protocol into their curricula, a new standard for investigating suspicious animal disappearances and deaths. It emphasized the systematic collection of trace evidence, the importance of digital forensics in animal crime, and the psychological profiling of perpetrators who commit such acts. This interdisciplinary approach recognized that crimes against animals often ran parallel to, or were precursors for, violence against humans, a chilling correlation that had been tragically overlooked for too long. The illicit market for animal genetic material, a dark underbelly exposed by Pendleton's confession, also came under intense scrutiny. Investigations launched in the wake of the case revealed a far more extensive network than previously imagined, involving unscrupulous breeders, wealthy collectors, and even some seemingly legitimate veterinary practices operating on the fringes of ethical conduct. These clandestine operations often involved the cruel harvesting of genetic material from animals kept in squalid conditions, their welfare completely disregarded in the pursuit of profit. Barnaby's case, therefore, became a catalyst for global raids and arrests, dismantling parts of this underground trade and shining a much-needed light on its barbaric practices. Yet, despite the victories and the systemic changes, the scars remained. For Sarah, the image of Barnaby's gentle eyes, his trusting nature, was a constant companion. She often found herself walking by his memorial bench, a quiet moment of reflection, speaking to the stone as if to the animal himself. The weight of his sacrifice, she believed, demanded not just justice, but a permanent transformation of how society viewed and protected its most vulnerable creatures. His story was a testament to the fact that cruelty, in all its forms, must be met with unyielding resolve and that the capacity for compassion, though sometimes tested, must ultimately prevail. The Oakhaven Canine Sanctuary, though forever marked by the tragedy, emerged stronger, more resilient. It became a beacon, drawing visitors and volunteers from across the country, all inspired by Barnaby's story and the sanctuary's unwavering commitment. Donations surged, allowing for expansions, improved facilities, and the funding of cutting-edge rehabilitation programs for abused and neglected animals. The very loss that had threatened to cripple them had, instead, forged an unbreakable spirit of advocacy and protection. Years later, Arthur Pendleton remained incarcerated, his name synonymous with cold-blooded animal cruelty. His once meticulously ordered world had crumbled, replaced by the stark, unforgiving routines of prison life. His appeals were repeatedly denied, the overwhelming evidence and his own confession leaving no room for doubt or leniency. He was a cautionary figure, a grim reminder of how ambition unchecked by empathy could lead to depravity, how the desire for material gain could extinguish all humanity. The dense woods surrounding Pendleton's property, once a silent accomplice to his horrific act, were meticulously scoured over time. Though Barnaby's full remains were never recovered, fragments, meticulously identified through advanced DNA techniques, offered a partial closure. These fragments were interred near his memorial bench, a final resting place for a noble animal whose life had been so senselessly taken. The woods themselves, once a place of secluded beauty, now carried a faint, lingering whisper of sorrow, a testament to the dark secret they had once held. The legacy of Barnaby wasn't just in the laws changed or the policies enacted. It was etched into the hearts of the Oakhaven community, into the determined efforts of Sarah Jenkins, and into the very fabric of the sanctuary he once called home. His life, though ended tragically, became a powerful symbol of the innocence and vulnerability of animals, and the profound responsibility humans bear towards them. It taught a chilling lesson, that the true measure of a society often lies in how it treats its most defenseless members, and that a betrayal of trust, especially one so profound, reverberates far beyond the immediate victim, leaving an indelible mark on the collective conscience. And so, the story of Barnaby, the magnificent Irish wolfhound, became more than just a case file. It transformed into an enduring narrative of warning, resilience, and ultimately, hope. It was a somber reminder that the dark undercurrent of human depravity, where companions become commodities, is a reality that must be constantly confronted and challenged. But it also proved that from the deepest sorrow, a profound and lasting commitment to justice and compassion can emerge, forever changing the landscape of animal welfare, ensuring that the silent vow made by Sarah and her team continues to echo through generations. The memory of Barnaby, the gentle giant, would live on, not as a victim, but as a catalyst for a better, more humane world. The memory of Barnaby, the gentle giant, would live on, not as a victim, but as a catalyst for a better, more humane world. A world where the insidious shadows of exploitation and cruelty could be pushed back by the unwavering light of advocacy and informed vigilance. The narrative, however, did not conclude with Pendleton's incarceration or the mere passage of new legislation. The Barnaby case, for all its resolution, uncovered layers of a pervasive problem that extended far beyond one man's avarice, opening a Pandora's box of ethical dilemmas and systemic failures that continue to challenge the very foundations of animal welfare and ownership. One of the most profound and unexpected consequences of the Oakhaven tragedy was the profound scrutiny it brought to the practice of animal breeding itself, especially regarding purebred animals and the booming, often opaque industry of genetic material trade. The Pendleton Protocol for Forensic Investigation was just the beginning. Legal scholars, ethicists, and animal scientists began to convene, questioning the very definition of ownership, when an animal's genetic code could be bought, sold, and manipulated, sometimes without the knowledge or consent of the animal's original owners. What constituted a breeder's rights versus an animal's right to life and dignity? These philosophical debates, once confined to academic journals, now burst into public consciousness, fueled by the vivid and heartbreaking details of Barnaby's fate. The case also highlighted the critical role of data security in unexpected domains. Who could have imagined that the digital vulnerabilities of an animal sanctuary's internal network could lead to such a heinous crime? Cybersecurity experts, initially focused on financial institutions or national infrastructure, began to reevaluate the protection of sensitive data across a broader spectrum of organizations, including those that house and care for animals. The Oakhaven Canine Sanctuary, under Sarah Jenkins' leadership, shared its harrowing experience, consulting with other sanctuaries, zoos, and rescue organizations across the globe. This led to the development of robust, multi-layered digital defense strategies, transforming internal networks from mere operational tools into fortified bastions against external threats, both human and digital. Moreover, the psychological aspect of Arthur Pendleton's crime became a significant area of study. Forensic psychologists and criminologists dissected his profile, seeking to understand the progression from perceived financial desperation to meticulous planning, and ultimately, to an act of barbaric cruelty. Pendleton's initial detachment, his carefully constructed facade of indifference, and his subsequent breakdown under pressure, offered a chilling case study in psychopathy and situational ethics. Conferences and workshops were held, not just to discuss the legal implications of animal cruelty, but to explore the underlying psychological pathologies that drive such acts, often finding unsettling correlations between animal abuse and other forms of violence. The Pendleton effect became a term used to describe the insidious creep of avarice and self-interest, overriding moral boundaries, culminating in unspeakable acts against the vulnerable. Sarah Jenkins, transformed by grief into an unyielding force for change, found herself navigating a complex landscape of media attention, political maneuvering, and scientific inquiry. She established the Barnaby Legacy Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to funding advanced forensic training for animal cruelty investigators, supporting legislative efforts for stronger animal protection, and providing resources for victims of animal exploitation. The foundation's work was comprehensive, reaching into underserved communities to educate on responsible pet ownership, advocating for mandatory spaying and neutering programs, and campaigning against puppy mills and illicit breeding operations worldwide. One of the foundation's most impactful initiatives was the development of a national registry for all purebred animals, requiring mandatory DNA profiling and microchipping at birth or upon initial ownership transfer. This database, envisioned as a pedigree provenance system, aimed to prevent the kind of untraceable genetic material trade that Pendleton had sought to exploit. It linked animals directly to their legal owners, their breeders, and their veterinary histories, creating a transparent, accountable system that made it significantly harder for criminals to exploit animals for their genetic material or to dispose of them without consequence. The registry, nicknamed Barnaby's Archive, was fiercely debated by breeders concerned about privacy and government overreach, but the overwhelming public support, fueled by the memory of Barnaby, ultimately ensured its passage into law in several key states, with federal adoption still a long-term goal. The ethical considerations of animal cloning and genetic engineering also came under renewed focus. If an animal's genetic material could be so valuable, what were the implications for creating genetically identical copies, or for altering their fundamental biological makeup for human gain? These futuristic questions, once theoretical, now felt disturbingly immediate. The Barnaby case catalyzed a global discussion on defining the limits of scientific intervention when it intersected with the welfare and intrinsic value of animal life. International conventions and treaties began to explore uniform regulations for biotechnology applied to animals, seeking to prevent a future where animals could be reduced to mere biological commodities, their sentience and individuality overlooked in pursuit of profit or scientific advancement. The Oak Haven Canine Sanctuary continued to thrive under Sarah's unwavering dedication. The Barnaby Memorial Bench became a place of pilgrimage, not just for locals, but for animal lovers from across the country. On its surface, the sanctuary looked much the same: the sprawling yards, the bustling kennels, the hopeful faces of animals awaiting adoption. But beneath that exterior, a profound shift had occurred. It was no longer just a haven. It was a symbol of resistance, a testament to the enduring power of compassion in the face of cruelty. Every volunteer, every staff member, worked with a renewed sense of purpose, carrying the torch of Barnaby's memory, ensuring that his sacrifice was not in vain. New programs were implemented at the sanctuary, including a specialized trauma recovery unit for animals rescued from situations of severe abuse or exploitation. These animals, often bearing the physical and psychological scars of human depravity, received intensive, compassionate care, aided by cutting-edge veterinary medicine and behavioral therapy. The unit was partly funded by the Barnaby Legacy Foundation, a direct manifestation of their mission to heal the wounds left by crimes like Pendleton's. The success stories from this unit, the transformations of broken creatures into trusting companions, became a powerful counter-narrative to the darkness of Barnaby's end, offering hope and demonstrating the incredible resilience of the animal spirit. Years turned into a decade. Arthur Pendleton remained a forgotten figure, a name whispered only in legal circles or among those still haunted by the details of his crime. The initial outrage had faded into a grim historical footnote for most, but for Sarah Jenkins, the memory remained vivid, a constant companion and a relentless motivator. She retired from her role as sanctuary manager, but continued her work with the Barnaby Legacy Foundation, her passion undimmed. Her hair might have silvered, but her eyes retained the same fierce dedication that had propelled her through the darkest days of the investigation. The Oak Haven community, once an idyllic suburban landscape, had learned a harsh truth about the vulnerabilities that lay beneath its tranquil surface. It became a community known for its exemplary animal welfare initiatives, its robust local ordinances, and its highly active volunteer network dedicated to protecting animals. Children in Oakhaven schools were taught about Barnaby, not as a horror story, but as a lesson in empathy, responsibility, and the importance of speaking up for those who cannot speak for themselves. The story was woven into the town's identity, a constant reminder of the enduring impact of one magnificent Irish wolfhound. The case of Barnaby and Arthur Pendleton, therefore, transcended its initial parameters as a mere true crime story. It evolved into a multifaceted saga of legal reform, scientific inquiry, ethical debate, and profound community transformation. It became a global touchstone for animal rights, a testament to the interconnectedness of all life, and a powerful illustration of how the actions of one individual, however heinous, could ignite a wave of change that reshaped an entire societal paradigm. Barnaby's life, though tragically cut short by betrayal, ultimately became a beacon, guiding humanity towards a more compassionate, vigilant, and just future for all creatures great and small. His spirit, forever etched into the annals of animal welfare history, continued to inspire, ensuring that the dark undercurrents of human depravity would forever be challenged by the unwavering commitment to protection and love. His spirit, forever etched into the annals of animal welfare history, continued to inspire, ensuring that the dark undercurrents of human depravity would forever be challenged by the unwavering commitment to protection and love. The case also cast a long shadow, prompting uncomfortable questions about the inherent biases within the justice system itself. For too long, animal cruelty cases were often prosecuted as property crimes, trivializing the immense suffering involved and allowing perpetrators to evade truly meaningful consequences. Barnaby's ordeal forced a re-evaluation of this archaic legal framework, pushing for a classification of crimes against animals that acknowledged their sentience and capacity for pain, drawing parallels to offenses against vulnerable human beings. This shift was slow, battling entrenched legal precedents and economic interests, but the momentum was undeniable, fueled by a newly awakened public conscience. Sarah Jenkins, with the Barnaby Legacy Foundation, spearheaded lobbying efforts for what she termed sentience justice, advocating for legal recognition of animals as more than mere chattel. She argued that the ability to feel, to form bonds, and to experience fear and joy should confer a higher status under the law, demanding greater protections and stricter punishments for those who violated their trust. Her impassioned pleas resonated with judges, lawyers, and legislators who had previously viewed such arguments as idealistic. They began to understand that the cold, calculated actions of an Arthur Pendleton were not just about property damage. They were about a profound moral failing, a breach of the fundamental ethical contract between humans and the creatures who share their world. The legal battle for sentience justice became a movement, not just in Oakhaven, but nationally and even internationally. Legal scholars began drafting new legislation, collaborating with animal welfare organizations to create a unified front. Landmark cases citing Barnaby's tragic end began to emerge, challenging the status quo and slowly chipping away at the notion of absolute animal ownership. Judges were encouraged to consider not just the monetary value of an animal, but its intrinsic worth, its emotional impact on others, and the severity of the suffering inflicted. These were monumental shifts, requiring a fundamental rethinking of legal philosophy, but the seed planted by Barnaby's sacrifice had germinated into a formidable force for change. Beyond the legal and ethical reforms, the Barnaby case also spurred significant advancements in forensic veterinary medicine. The need for precise identification of genetic material, the reconstruction of fragmented remains, and the psychological profiling of animal abusers pushed the boundaries of what was previously possible. Universities and research institutions, often funded by grants from the Barnaby Legacy Foundation, developed new technologies for DNA analysis, improved methods for crime scene investigation involving animals, and advanced training for veterinarians in evidence collection and expert witness testimony. This elevated the scientific rigor in animal cruelty cases, making it far more difficult for perpetrators to escape justice through lack of evidence or imprecise analysis. One particularly poignant program that emerged from the Barnaby Legacy Foundation was the Barnaby Bonds Initiative. Recognizing the profound trauma experienced by sanctuary staff and volunteers who witnessed such betrayals, This program offered psychological support, counseling, and peer group therapy for individuals working in animal rescue and welfare. It acknowledged the emotional toll of daily exposure to animal suffering and the specific anguish that arose from cases like Barnaby's, where trust was so brutally violated. Sarah Jenkins understood that while the animals were the direct victims, the humans who dedicated their lives to their care also carried deep scars. The program provided a much-needed space for healing and resilience, ensuring that compassion fatigue would not extinguish the vital work of advocacy. The Oakhaven Canine Sanctuary, under the continued guidance of its expanded board of directors, flourished into an international model for animal care and protection. Its security systems became legendary, a testament to the lessons learned. Its adoption rates soared, as people from all walks of life sought to connect with animals in a safe, nurturing environment. The sanctuary also became a hub for public education, hosting workshops, seminars, and interactive exhibits that taught about responsible pet ownership, the dangers of illicit animal trade, and the importance of fostering empathy from a young age. Children who once learned about Barnaby in school now visited the sanctuary, some even volunteering, carrying forward the torch of his legacy. The memory of Arthur Pendleton, however, became a stark counterpoint to Barnaby's enduring light. His isolation in prison was absolute, a fitting consequence for a man who had isolated himself from empathy and humanity. He became a case study in the destructive power of greed, a man who had seen a living, breathing being as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. His name served as a whispered warning in criminal justice circles, a reminder of how quickly seemingly benign self-interest could metastasize into monstrous cruelty. The parole board, year after year, found him to be an unacceptable risk, his lack of genuine remorse chillingly evident in every sterile interaction. As the years passed, the direct grief for Barnaby transformed into a powerful, living memorial. His story, far from fading, continued to be retold, evolving into a foundational narrative for animal welfare. It educated new generations, reminding them that empathy was not a luxury but a necessity, and that the bond between humans and animals was a sacred trust that demanded unwavering protection. The stone bench under the ancient oak tree at the Oakhaven Canine Sanctuary remained a place of quiet contemplation, but it was no longer just a monument to loss. It was a symbol of hope, a testament to the enduring power of compassion to overcome even the darkest acts of human depravity. The reverberations of the Oakhaven case continued to echo, not just in legislative chambers or university lecture halls, but in the quiet acts of kindness performed daily by countless individuals. It was in the volunteer who spent an extra hour comforting a frightened rescue, in the family who chose to adopt an older, less conventionally appealing dog, in the community that rallied to support a local shelter. Barnaby's legacy was ultimately woven into the fabric of a more humane society, a world slowly but surely recognizing the inherent dignity of all creatures. His life, so tragically cut short, became an eternal flame, guiding a path towards a future where no animal would be viewed as a commodity, and where love and respect would always triumph over greed and cruelty. The magnificent Irish wolfhound, through his untimely demise, had achieved an immortality of purpose, a lasting testament to the profound impact one life, even a non-human one, could have on the collective soul of humanity. The magnificent Irish wolfhound, through his untimely demise, had achieved an immortality of purpose, a lasting testament to the profound impact one life, even a non-human one, could have on the collective soul of humanity. Indeed, the very nature of this impact continued to unfold and evolve, shaping not only policies and legal frameworks but also the subtle, yet powerful, shifts in individual perspectives and societal values. The ripples of Barnaby's story spread, touching corners of the world far removed from the quiet suburban streets of Oakhaven, demonstrating that compassion, once ignited, knows no geographical bounds. One of the most remarkable outcomes of the Barnaby case was the formation of the Global Animal Protection Coalition, GAPC, spearheaded by Sarah Jenkins and the Barnaby Legacy Foundation. This international alliance brought together leading animal welfare organizations, legal experts, government representatives, and renowned scientists from every continent. Their mission was clear: to establish universal standards for animal welfare, to combat transnational animal trafficking, and to lobby for the recognition of animal sentience in international law. The GAP's initial charter, unveiled at a highly publicized summit, directly referenced the Oakhaven tragedy as a pivotal moment, a stark illustration of the urgent need for a unified global front against animal exploitation. The coalition's efforts quickly bore fruit. Several nations, inspired by the Barnaby's Law initiative in the United States, began to reevaluate and strengthen their own animal protection statutes. International intelligence agencies, previously focused almost exclusively on human trafficking and narcotics, started dedicating resources to dismantling vast, interconnected networks involved in the illicit trade of exotic animals, their genetic material, and the gruesome market for animal parts. The detailed forensic techniques developed in the Pendleton case, the Pendleton Protocol, became a blueprint for investigations worldwide, leading to arrests and prosecutions in countries where such crimes had long gone unpunished. The ethical discussions sparked by Barnaby's fate continued to deepen, particularly concerning the burgeoning field of biotechnology and its application to animals. The GAPC established a standing committee on bioethics and animal welfare, composed of leading geneticists, philosophers, and veterinarians. This committee grappled with complex questions. If an animal's DNA could be patented, did it diminish the animal's inherent value? What were the long-term ecological and ethical consequences of creating designer animals for specific traits or for the sole purpose of genetic harvesting? These debates were not abstract. They were driven by a genuine concern that without careful oversight, the advancements of science could inadvertently pave the way for new, even more sophisticated forms of animal exploitation, echoing the very avarice that had consumed Arthur Pendleton. At the Oakhaven Canine Sanctuary, life continued its cyclical rhythm of rescue, rehabilitation, and adoption, but with a heightened sense of vigilance and purpose. The Barnaby Memorial Bench, now weathered and softened by time, was always adorned with fresh flowers, a constant reminder of the sanctuary's sacred vow. The ancient oak tree under which it stood had grown taller, its branches wider, casting a comforting shade over the spot. Volunteers, many of whom had only known Barnaby through his story, approached their duties with a solemn understanding of the trust placed in their hands. They were not just caretakers. They were guardians of a legacy. Maya, the young tech-savvy volunteer whose digital forensics had first uncovered Pendleton's insidious reconnaissance, went on to become a leading expert in cybersecurity for animal welfare organizations. She founded her own consultancy, offering pro bono services to smaller shelters and sanctuaries, helping them fortify their digital defenses against modern threats. Her work ensured that Barnaby's initial vulnerability, a seemingly innocuous digital glitch, would never again be exploited to facilitate such a horrific crime. She often spoke at GAPC summits, emphasizing that animal protection in the digital age required as much diligence as physical security, a testament to the unforeseen lessons learned from Oakhaven. The Barnaby Bonds initiative expanded, establishing a global network of support groups and mental health resources for animal welfare professionals. It recognized that the relentless exposure to trauma, abuse, and the sometimes insurmountable challenges of advocacy could lead to profound emotional burnout. By fostering a culture of mutual support and shared experience, the initiative helped sustain the very individuals on the front lines, ensuring that their passion for animals remained vibrant and resilient. Sarah Jenkins, now a revered elder statesman of the animal rights movement, often spent her mornings in the virtual Barnaby Bonds meetings, offering wisdom, empathy, and comfort, her voice a soothing balm to those carrying the heavy mantle of compassion. The long-term impact of Pendleton's incarceration was a subject of ongoing sociological and psychological study. He became a reference point in discussions about the continuum of violence, the disturbing correlation between animal abuse and other forms of criminality. While his specific case was driven by financial greed, the subsequent dismemberment and disposal of Barnaby's remains revealed a profound lack of empathy that transcended mere avarice. His life behind bars served as a stark, enduring reminder that society's responsibility extended not only to protecting the vulnerable but also to understanding, and ultimately preventing, the pathologies that breed such cruelty. The Oakhaven community, transformed by tragedy into a beacon of animal welfare, continued to lead by example. Its schools incorporated comprehensive animal ethics curricula, fostering a generation deeply ingrained with respect for all living beings. Local businesses often sponsored animal welfare events, and the town itself became a model for how a community could collectively heal and grow stronger in the face of profound adversity. The annual Barnaby Day Festival, held on the anniversary of his rescue, was a celebration of life, a joyous affirmation of the unbreakable bond between humans and animals, drawing visitors from across the country. Barnaby's story, therefore, transcended the sorrow of his demise. It became a powerful narrative of transformation, demonstrating humanity's capacity to learn, to adapt, and to evolve its moral compass. His life, so tragically stolen, ignited a flame of awareness that burned brightly, illuminating the path towards a more just, compassionate, and vigilant world for all creatures. The gentle giant from Oakhaven, through his silent sacrifice, had indeed achieved an immortality of purpose, woven into the very fabric of a global movement, ensuring that his legacy would continue to inspire, forever challenging the shadows of exploitation and cruelty with the unwavering light of advocacy, informed vigilance, and an enduring, boundless love.